After more than 100 episodes and countless mentions, the person you may have heard about the most and never heard from finally takes the mic. Today, you get to meet the man once referred to as my fiancé, now referred to as my husband, whom you'll now know simply as Robie, after he joins me for an intimate conversation using our 20 questions for a year well-loved framework. It's questions you get to download and use as well. In this episode, we keep it honest, so you'll hear about his reluctance. Yeah, he didn't actually want to do the episode, but he came around. But you'll get to hear about that. He talks about it. You'll also hear how it all turned out and what he thought in the end. We wouldn't encourage you to do anything that we didn't walk through ourselves and go through those bumps. It was more profound than I expected, and I'm really excited that you get to be part of this conversation we had. And I was surprised how quickly the time flew, but we need to get to it so that we can fit it all in. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to The Grit Show, where our focus is growth on purpose. I'm your host, Shauna Rodriguez, and I'm honored to be part of this community as we journey together with our grit intact to learn more about how to thrive and how to get the most out of life. It means a lot that you are here today. As you listen, I encourage you to think of who may appreciate the tidbits of knowledge we are sharing and to take a moment to pass this along to them. Everyone appreciates a friend that thinks of them, and these conversations are meant to be shared and to spark even more connections. So on one hand, if you've been around the Grit Show at all, today's guest needs no introduction because you've probably heard a thing or two. Usually referred to as the love of my life, sometimes referred to as Robie, and more frequently now referred to as my husband.
Strange.
Strange, very strange. I know. It finally got used to you being my fiance, and then you became my husband, and I'm getting used to it though. Are you used to me?
I've been calling you my wife since June of 2019.
So that wasn't much of a transition.
Yes, for me, that transition. But sometimes it is weird to remember that I'm married, even though I've called you my wife for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's weird to be married.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Legally married.
Legally. Yes. It's legitimate now. We finally had the big party and it was pretty amazing.
It was pretty darn awesome.
We did, yeah. No, it turned out way better than I expected. I think that being ready for it to possibly not be as amazing as we expected made it easier for it to be more amazing than we could have ever expected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that when you're in the middle of planning things and you know there's so many things that could go wrong, it's hard to imagine how well it's going to turn out. And then once you're in it and you just have to deal with however things happen. And I think because you and I roll with things well, but also our friends and family roll with things well.
Yeah.
There was no event that ruined anything because we all just roll with it.
We have amazing people. We're so lucky we have amazing people in our world.
Really.
And we did it so funny because we actually did make a list on our honeymoon of the things that went awry because I'd already forgotten them because we knew we'd forget those. We knew we'd remember the really awesome things until we forget all the funny things, like one of our friends getting a flat tire and being stranded at the venue, all these random things, like the ring and what else was forgotten? All the stuff was forgotten. All these things happened, but we knew we'd forget that because it would be oh, it's amazing, all the people and the great games, the fun we had, and
and it was amazing and great and fun, and none of the little hiccups. They were blips.
However, the reason that my fabulous love is here today is because we're actually just kick off 2025. We have 20 questions for a year well loved. And so my love came on here so he and I could actually demonstrate and have the opportunity to have that conversation about how to actually talk to your partner and reflect on things together and do that together. So that's the reason why he came on here. We've talked about you coming on before.
We talked about having me on. I don't like to be on camera, and I don't like to see myself on camera or in pictures or in a mirror. So I resist this sort of thing.
Yes.
I know it's important and it sounded interesting, and if I can get over the anxiety, I'm sure I will enjoy this.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you doing it very much. And we've talked about other things too, but we've forgotten even about things we talked about. And this is a fun reason to have you on here. And I still think so. Anyone out here who knows somebody that like loves golf, Robie loves golf. You've heard that from the podcast, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Yes. But he also has these amazing life lessons that you get from golf. So I still think that one day you may end up with a YouTube channel on golf. He watches YouTube and golf all the time.
All time.
All the time. So like I feel like he would be so successful because he's so much more immersed in it. And yet you have these really great ideas about what you get from golf that just like adds to the depth of it. So I feel like, I don't know, one day you never know.
It could be. I explain to people all the time that for me, golf is meditation or whatever it is that you do for your alone time and to like find your soul or get back with nature. And for me, that's golf.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I care about my score, but for me, it's the one place in the world where I have 4 or 5 hours where there's nothing beyond what I'm doing in the moment in my brain.
Mhm.
So I will completely forget about something I need to go buy or a situation at work or at home or family or all the different things that can come into your mind. When I'm golfing, I'm 100% present. And I love that. That's probably why I love golf so much.
And centered. You get centered as well. And I love too when you talk about the lessons from it, because like when you hit the ball, like all you can do is what you put into it. And like when you went golfing yesterday,
Mhm.
which by the way, there was snow on the ground last night. So it's like, so when you went golfing yesterday, it was not kind conditions, maybe most to golf. And that the wind was really bad. And like, so you'd hit it and you had the right swing, the right club, the right everything, and it'd be 30 yards short because of the wind. And like, you just can't control those things. And it's a good life lesson of you just put in what you can and then the rest is out of your hand.
Right. You can't be focused on the outcome. You can only make the right swing for golf, but choices leading
Yes.
up to the impact of the ball. And after that, even when there's no wind and it's great weather, your ball can hit a rock in the ground and shoot off
Yes.
and end
Yes.
up, or you can hit a perfect shot that should go into the hole. It could be a hole in one or knocking the ball in from 150 yards out, but it hits the pin. And when it hits the pin, it skyrockets off to the side and you could end up in the worst possible place. And so
Yeah.
golf is a great game of you can't be wrapped up in the outcome. If you are, you're going to be very unhappy. You're not going to enjoy it.
Yes.
If that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Because if the score that you get is your main focus when you're out on the golf course, I'm sorry, it's not going to be an enjoyable sport for you. Because
Yes.
very few people, very like 0.5% of people are going to be amazing scratch golfers who make money, let alone be the best player at their club, right? Instead, you have to realize that you've chosen to be out on a course doing this thing that you can do everything correctly and the ball could end up in the worst possible spot. And that's
Yes.
okay. Be okay with that.
Yeah. And it's a huge life lesson, I feel like. And I feel like it's the greatest example of what I try to think about with life. Because there's a lot of people that feel like what you get out of life is what you put into life.
Mhm.
And so there's like, you work harder, like you got it, whatever else. But I think that the game of golf is a good example of like, you could be amazing. You could be doing everything right. And yet there's going to be things you never expect that you hit, like the rock, like the tree, the this, the that gets in the way. And you just have to like work with what happens. And sometimes you can go through an entire round and never hit a rock, never have a tree, never have like this soggy fairway that like sinks your ball that you can never find.
Right. You've experienced that. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you can get through an entire round and know that it happens. You have like the game of your life, or you get every single turn. And the more you let those things get to you, the worse your game's going to get because you're not bringing your best game to it.
Right. And I think that what people forget is a lot of times dissatisfaction comes from expectation.
Mhm.
I expect that because I spent the time learning to golf, practicing my swing, choosing the right equipment, all these things, that my score must be better. And so when it's not, then I don't have a good time. But if I remove that expectation, just like life, I remove the expectation and just enjoy the process, then I'm going to be a happier person for it. In the strange way, golf reminds me to take that mindset into the rest of my life. And it reminds me potentially 100 times around, right? Every time I swim.
Yes.
A constant reminder. But I also like to think or be reminded that practicing or doing it more often increases the chances of the outcome I want.
Yeah. Yes.
So there is a benefit to be trying over and over again. That applies to life too.
Yeah.
Yes, you may have made the right choices. You've gone to the right schools. You took the right job and it doesn't turn out well. But the more often you take the right choices, make the right choices, suffer to get better in something, you increase the chances for the outcome you want, but you don't guarantee the outcome you want.
Yeah.
There's an old quote in sports, and that's luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Ooh, I like
Right?
that.
Some people are considered lucky, but you don't get lucky unless you do the work. So I think of that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, so it's just one of those things that pops in my head. Like getting a hole in one in golf is lucky. There are really good golfers who have hit tens of thousands, if not millions, of golf shots and have never gotten a hole in one. So it is luck to hit a hole in one. However, there's a greater chance to be lucky
Yeah.
when you've put the time and effort into it.
Yeah. Robie has gotten a hole in one, by the way.
Luck.
And preparation. He worked really hard. And he's a much happier person when he gets to golf. And golf is an important thing you do for yourself. And I love that you recognize that and that there's space in the work you've chosen. You have more time in your world to be able to do that as well. Because he typically works 4/10s. And so he's able to have a day and time to be able to golf as well. And that's important.
Well, it is important, but I think what you don't always recognize is like you recognize that it's important to me and my mental health, and you don't give me a hard time about it because I hear so often about somebody's partner giving them a hard time about their whatever it is that they choose to do.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, my wife doesn't like it when I do X, Y, or Z, whether it's hang out with friends or go watch football or go to the gym or CrossFit or whatever. Or my husband doesn't like it when I spend time with my friends or go out dancing. And the important thing to remember is if you know that something your spouse or partner does that is important for their mental health or their well-being in any way, shape, or form, you don't have to like it as well.
Yes.
But it's okay to recognize that it's important to them and let them go do that without giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
If you rolled your eyes or sighed loudly every time I told you I was going to go golf or that I wanted to go golf, I'd probably still do it because I'm that kind of a
You're an upholder. We've discussed this. An upholder.
I would feel guilty about it. I would take less enjoyment for it. I would spend most of my round thinking like, oh, should I really be doing, anyway.
Yes.
And the point is I like hearing you say that I am good at recognizing how important that is for me. But equally as important is that you recognize it and you care enough about me that you're okay with me doing that, even if sometimes you had some other ideas of what you wanted to do. You don't tell me that you had something else you wanted to do, right? Does that make sense? And that would lessen my enjoyment of what I'm going to do because I'd be thinking, oh, should I have canceled this and went to do whatever it is that she wanted, that sort of thing. So I don't even know if you recognize how important that is for me, but it is, and I appreciate it.
Well, and you've grown in that. I think when we first got together, I don't think you recognized how important golf was to you. I think you did it and you had space for it, but it was like an advantage of being single that you got to do it. It was something you'd have to give up if you were ever in a relationship instead of recognizing it was an important part of who you were and doing it was an important part of you being happy. But it was something that it was like an indulgence that you would have to give up if the time wasn't there, the money wasn't there, or there were other demands that it had to go instead of being like, no, this is like, even when we're stressed, even when there's other stuff going on, you need to make time for this. And I think that you've gotten a little better. You still have some guilt sometimes with going to like, oh, for going to those things, but you've gotten better at recognizing what it does for you. And I think that that's taken you time to see that.
And it has. It's funny because I don't mean to turn this back on you again. But a lot of that is that you give me the ability to do that. So to make it more obvious or explain that, my mindset has been most of my life in most of my relationships is I'm going to give things up for my partner because they don't either like them or want me to do them or whatever. And that may or may not have been true. I don't even know. In some ways, I remember specific instances. But in general, I've thought of a relationship as when I give things up for another person. You have never required that or asked that of me. And instead, you've often encouraged me to do things that I would have assumed a partner would have wanted me to not do. And so your willingness or acceptance has actually made it easier for me to go, oh, yes, this is important to me. I don't need to give this up. A relationship isn't about sacrificing parts of myself for the other person. In some ways, obviously, there's going to be people who do that. But in general, it doesn't have to be. And that, for me, probably why we're married, is a revelation. Relationships can be amazing and not sacrificial, primarily.
Yes. Like us.
So do I. I'm big that.
That's you're lucky. I love us. I love it. Yeah. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. That's amazing. Well, good. I love talking to you and spending time with you. Yeah. Okay. So let's get to these questions. I'm excited for these questions. And these questions, for anyone who's listening, there's actually a link in the show notes so you can get a copy of these questions as well. So other people can get these same questions. I don't know that we're going to get to all of them. There's 20 of them, which is a good amount. And there's like a nice little guidance at the top about like when to do them and to like, you don't have to do them all at once and that they're supposed to be relaxed and unhurried or whatever else. And they're kind of broken up into 4 questions per category, 5 different categories. And so we're going to kind of go through them. And when you do it, the intention is that you answer, both of you answer each of them. But for the sake of time or whatever else, we're going to go through and just ask each other back and forth the questions so that we can kind of do them.
And I just, before we get started, wanted to say that I had the opportunity to read through these or even have them printed out so I would have them ahead of time. And I chose not to because I want a genuine reaction to it and not my brain coming up with the perfect answer, if that makes sense. So I may pause and I may look confused as I try to figure out what I'm going to say, but I'm going into this blind. Nice. I can embrace that because this is the kind of thing that would normally cause me great anxiety.
Embrace them. And you guys, I came up with the questions. But I didn't rehearse answers to them. So that makes you feel any better. I didn't put thought into answers to them. I did put thought into what the questions might be to kind of help to like, because I love conversations that like dive deeper and do that. Obviously, I have a podcast. And we just had to pause for a moment too, because this is not your thing. You are one of the people that helps to point out that I ask a lot of questions.
Right.
And one of the things that you love me wholly, and this is part of me to accept this. But if there was one thing that you could have less of with me, it'd probably be the questions, huh?
I think in general, like not you.
Yeah,
I'm talking in general. I'm not a deep questioner. Like I don't even know how to say that. Like I question the world,
the universe,
like how things are made, how things are done. But I don't think deeply about relationship, people. Like, that's just not my jam.
Yeah.
And learning to reflect. Now, I have always felt like I'm a pretty good reflector of myself because I constantly feel like I'm working on me because there's never a finished product.
Yeah.
But I don't think about that beyond me. Yeah, anyway, it's just an interesting dynamic, and sometimes I'm exasperated by it. And then a week later, as it burrows into my brain and then comes up with really cool things, I'm like, oh yeah, that was actually really neat.
Yeah.
So, but my natural reaction is usually like, oh, again?
Yeah.
That's just my natural reaction. And I love that doesn't fluster you, right? Like you just accept that that's how I react to it. And probably, I hope, realize that, oh, he'll get there eventually. Like, down the road, because I'll never not pay attention. I will let it marinate in my brain until my brain comes up with something.
Yes.
But my initial reaction is going to be like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, oh, that was really cool. I'm going to redo that.
Yes. Yes.
And I've mentioned to her, she loves to paint. And I am very critical of myself in most things, but in art especially, because I was a math kid, a sports kid, and art was not something I ever felt good at.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, hey, do you want to paint? And 99 times out of 100, I'm like, no, I do not want to paint. And yet I've told her multiple times that when I am like, yeah, let's go ahead. Like I end up having a lot more fun than I thought I was going to. So your questions are a lot like painting for me. And my initial reaction is like, I'm not going to like this.
Yeah.
And then I know, oh yeah, I really did.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And kind of one of our fun jokes is that is almost like I don't even bother, like, why did I even bother asking? Because like, he'll go to work and he'll tell me, "Oh, such and such," and tell me this much of something, like, "Oh, such and such is going to the coast this weekend." I'm like, "Oh, we're out on the coast." He's like, "I don't know. Why would I know that?"
My response is always like, I didn't ask. If they wanted me to know, they would have told me.
Why would I ask that? But I mean, yeah, with all these follow-up questions, like, why would I ask this? And because I have the podcast at work and work from home and do the stuff that I do from home, like, I don't interact with a ton of people, and so I'm always like and he works with amazing people, and I enjoy it.
Right.
So I'm always, like, asking about them, and it's so funny, like, why would I ask that?
I have no idea.
And I still always ask the follow-up questions, and then we laugh at the fact that why I still always ask follow-up questions, and he never has.
Yeah, or I say, wow, that's a great question that I probably should have asked. It never occurred to me.
Never occurred to me.
Yeah. People probably assume I'm disinterested in their lives.
Details.
I never ask.
So, right, yeah. But it's just different ways that our minds work. Whereas when it comes to asking questions about the universe and how things work on those levels,
Right.
like you have so many more questions than I have,
Right.
and so many more ways of putting things together and ways of thinking through why this might be happening with those other pieces that I just don't put brain power into.
Right.
And so we just have different things we put brain power
Yeah,
into.
our focuses are different, our brains work differently, and that's
We appreciate that about
well, I absolutely, yeah. And it's having a partner who is different than thinks differently than the way I do has actually opened my world up in ways that I never imagined would be as cool as they are.
Yes. And we don't take it personally, which I think is the key to it, that we find humor and enjoyment in the fact we
There is a lot of laughter. And I think that's important.
Yes, we appreciate that. All right, let's dive in. So the first category is growth and evolution. So how have you grown individually this year?
I am going to, and a lot of these answers are probably going to have to do with being married. I did. But I don't know if Sean has mentioned this. I assume she has in her podcast, but there was a time where there was jokes about wedding glow Robie.
Yes.
And it may not be as obvious now, but it still exists. And so my individual growth this year, like on the largest level, is of being a husband, but not the husband part, more of understanding that you love me even when I'm not doing correct thing. Like I will fail, and that's not going to change your love for me. And I think that has been the biggest that we've mentioned Wedding Glow Roby, but I've never dove into what I thought it was. And that's what it is. Like I am a pretty confident person. Most people would say that they see of me as somebody who's very confident. This is the first time I have ever been less fearful about being rejected. And so probably multiple times in our relationship, I've still harbored this fear that at some point you're going to wake up and realize I'm not the one, and then on. And I didn't even realize how that would feel once we got married and that went away, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
For me, that's individual growth, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I'm happy unconditionally. You're stuck
Which
with
is
me.
mind-blowing.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not performing for you. You've already accepted me.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Because I often feel like a lot of what I do feels performative.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So anyway.
Yeah, no need for that.
Yeah. And that's amazing.
Do you want us to be number 2?
Number 2. What is the biggest change you have noticed in our relationship? Hi, Miko.
Our kitties, we talked about either putting them upstairs or letting them come and join us. So one of our cats is trying to join us. So that might happen. What is the biggest change I've noticed in our relationship? I think probably like exactly what you're saying, like that wedding glow Roby element, that we got married and we got back from the honeymoon and like stuff was in the fan for me. Like I literally had like a credit card stolen. I had health stuff happening with family members. I had stuff happening with staff and my business, things going like sideways. And then Roby was Mr. Positive. What is this? So I think like this ability for you to hold like this positive outlook and this change that it's not what I expected. Like I didn't expect us to up level by getting married. Like we've been together long enough, been good long enough. We have this incredible our relationship is already more than I ever expected.
Right.
And already such a gift and such a bonus. And then to like have things like after the wedding crumbling and have this super positive partner that like with a lot of great qualities, but that having one of them.
No. Positivity. I don't really feel like I'm a pessimist, but I feel like the things that I get from the world are run through a filter of realism in my head because I'm aware of how things can go wrong. But I've become a more positive person since we got married. Which is
not expect.
I didn't go there.
So it's like that's a funny like bonus thing that I just did not expect for that to happen. So that's been like this kind of fun bonus. So there's lots of great elements for our relationship, but I did not expect that to be one of them. Especially because I think that a lot of times in life people get married and then it feels like people discover negative things about their partners. That makes sense. Like the mask falls off somehow with people.
Mhm.
Yeah, fell off for you.
That's funny.
That was like not the thing that I expected. So that was kind of, I think that was the element that shifted was this extra bonus level of positivity that I just didn't expect. So it was kind of this nice little bonus that we got in our relationship. And I think that we continue to get stronger, which we were already pretty strong. I know you hear people say that stuff like, I didn't think I could love you anymore. La, la, la. You're like,
right. You roll your eyes and you're like, oh, okay.
Yes, everyone will,
you know,
we understand. We don't like, you can roll your eyes all you want at us. We understand and we sound ridiculous sometimes, but yeah, those things are true.
Yeah, I am. And that, it irks me a little bit. They're true, if that makes sense. You know, like when you watch the rom-coms and people talk about that, you're just like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Now you have to be like, oh, well, it does happen.
I guess.
Yeah.
That can be possible. Okay. So there's two more questions here, but we're going to skip over the next two questions and go to the next area just so that we can get to all the areas. And so emotional connection is the next section. So what moment this year made you feel the most loved?
Oh, that's a good question. This is going to sound interesting, maybe, or feel not important.
Mm-hmm.
But when I finally caught COVID for the first time, and I don't have a lot of memory of the night when I first got sick, I just was miserable. And I just remember being in tears, and I don't cry very well. That's not true. I cry during movies and commercials, like emotional cry. I don't cry from pain.
Yeah.
And I was in severe pain.
Yes.
Because for me, the first thing that happened when I caught COVID and my temperature spiked was all of the joints that I've had surgery on and injuries to suddenly hurt maximally. And so being in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and crying and you just holding me, I feel like it's something I haven't had since I was a child and my mother was holding me. If that makes sense.
Yes. He goes in the highs when he's sick. Like, he doesn't want anyone near him. Like, he will literally go into his man cave at our last house, like downstairs, far away, hidden when he's sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so for me, I feel like looking at that question, people want to hear some more emotional depth to it. But for me, it's emotional for me because of being able to be miserable physically and be able to express that and not be judged for it, which could be a whole nother level of discussion of me. But again, it's not something I felt a comfort from somebody else when I'm expressing that emotion, probably since I was a young child. You know, and I say that like young child, because when I was 6 and I hurt myself, it was suck it up.
Yeah.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like boys don't cry. All those things. So young child.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't even remember the last time I felt that.
No. Yes. I had to throw in a tiny story that Robie had shoulder surgery a few summers back.
Mhm.
And we went to go have the surgery. Like he was actually And I could tell. So I asked, I said, do you want me to leave? And he was more comfortable with me leaving pre-surgery because he's done so many surgeries and he's done them alone.
Right.
He's been alone. And I'm used to being the only person in my family that everyone has there when they're getting their surgeries done or when they're getting medical stuff done. This says the hospital supports everyone. So it was really hard for me to not be there, but I could tell that it was harder for him to have me there than for him to be alone because he's in a medical profession. Like he supports people through that stuff. And so he's comfortable around other medical professionals when he's preparing for surgery or in pain or dealing with that stuff. But he was not comfortable being around me when he was getting ready to go into surgery and doing that. So it really does show the trajectory of our relationship, even that you could let me comfort you and be there for you when you were in that place too. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
That means a lot to that. I wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to skip the next question.
Okay.
Just because I really like this. What small gesture of mine meant the most to you?
Oh, you are so good at doing little things. And it's so funny because I'm going to go to broader little things. This is the funniest thing ever. There's a joke that we have about, I don't remember which movie it is, about the girl who leaves glasses of water everywhere that are half full.
Yeah.
But I leave half full. I have bottles of water that I like to have in the fridge that are full. And like Robie would always fill them up and put them back in the fridge for me without me even knowing. So like he has these little ways of taking care of me, like he does without even knowing. But I think the most recent little small gesture of yours that you did is when this makes me sound ridiculous, but I couldn't find like 3 pairs of my earrings, favorite pairs of earrings of mine. And so I finally mentioned to Robie, and it sounds silly that I mentioned to Robie to say, like, I can't find these earrings. And there's this pair, and this pair. And he knew which pairs they were because he pays attention to me and my silly earrings. So I knew which pairs of earrings I was talking about that I couldn't find. I was like, I don't know, like, if I've been traveling and I left them somewhere, like I've looked in my bags, like I find them. It's been like a few weeks now. I've been able to find them. I missed my earrings. Like I know what's happened to them. And he immediately found them. It's embarrassing because I actually I hung up this thing I had the whole earrings and I forgot that I hung up. So I actually hung up a thing and they would put out so I'd find them easier and I'd lost them for literally 3 weeks because I never looked at the place I'll hang them up. But he instantly found them for me to that. But I think it was just the fact that I could tell him silly little things like I can't find my earrings for 3 weeks. He knew what I was talking about. He took the time to look for them and found them. And even like today, like when I was doing stuff for the podcast, he would come over and help me plug things in. And I could just ask you for help for the silliest little things. And you always just like jump to it to help me out with the silliest little thing. My love language is acts of service. It comes to play here. Like you always just jump in to help with the silliest little things. See, I'm thinking of 20 million things now. And so Christmas Eve, I was driving back from Minnesota, Oregon, and I made up a menu for Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner, and we were having a friend over for Christmas Eve. And the Christmas Eve dinner was the one that I was supposed to do. He was supposed to do Christmas Day. And so I had ridiculous things on there, like carrot souffle and bacon wrapped cream bean bundles and stuff like that, because I don't bake very often. So I was excited to cook and make those things. But I was about 2 hours behind because that happens when I go to Southern Oregon visit family. I get into a vortex there. And so I called and was like, I don't know, like we'll push our guest back a little bit. And he's like, oh, I'll take care of it. I'll cook it all. He'd never cooked those things before. And he just made them and just made it happen. And dinner was delicious. And he like from beef Wellington to carrot soup. Like he just picked it up and he did a great job. And he wouldn't even bothered by like coming home from work and then having to like make this fancy dinner that I concocted when I was making it. So it was like all those little things you just like step up and step in without ever blinking. And I totally appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you. I enjoy doing it.
Well, I enjoy doing it too.
And the funny thing is I'm a contrarian. And so like if I was required to do that sort of thing or told to do it, I would resist and I'd grumble inwardly at least the entire time. I enjoy doing it for you. And I also enjoy because you appreciate it, right? You have appreciation for it. So that, I don't know, that works very well.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Like,
I very much do. Yes.
Hobbs has decided to make himself a part of this.
It's Hobbs is coming his lap and also trying to speak into the microphone. So if you get a meow, you know who's contributing. Because he definitely wants to be part of it. I love this. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we both got one from emotional connection. So we're going to jump over to challenges and resilience. And so I'm going to ask number 10. So when did you feel proudest of how we handled something together this year?
I'm gonna need a moment to come up with it. So, I think you're aware of this. Sort of how my brain works is when a problem arises and then is resolved, I forget about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's erased because whatever reason, my brain just compartmentalized that and it's gone.
Yeah. Done.
So, I can't even think of any issues.
I love that.
I legitimately am trying to think of, like, a troubled time that we overcame.
Oh, then can I steal the question?
No, please do.
I'll totally steal the question then. I think I've been proud of how we've handled our families together.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes to the wedding even, like, how we handle something. I think that we both, because I think that with our families are both complicated, but I think that we do such a good job of, like, respecting each other, taking the lead on untangling things when it comes to our family, but both having immense empathy for what the other one is dealing with in individual situations with our family, good and bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think that I feel like we've matured along our relationship in that way with those pieces. And that goes like with how for the wedding and
Right.
who's invited and not invited, like how we like did all those different pieces to like even determining like how stuff handled with us because we spent Christmas here because of your work schedule, but we still had to get some stuff down there, like how we handled those things. Like I feel like we've just done such a great job of supporting each other with those things and understanding like the way we do that. And I really respect and appreciate that you get how much I love my family and I want to be there for them and do things for them and let me do that and
Mhm.
support me doing that. Because I think past partners who really resent and get frustrated and we're my family taking advantage of me, et cetera, et cetera. And you are my most fierce protector. Like you love me, care about me, and whatever else. But at the same time, you get my love for my family, the desire to do things for them and support that at the same time as protecting me and supporting me in this beautiful way that makes me feel supported so
Mhm.
I can still be there for them, but still feel protected at the same time. Like, we do a beautiful job of balancing that. And I feel like that's like the way that we come together. And I feel like we do that together. Like I feel like you're an absolute ally in all of that. So somebody who's so wrong with my family, they run the other way. Or somebody who's like pushing me away to protect me so much.
Right.
Or that's what happens. You know, somebody trying to protect me so much, they're like causing division, making it harder on me to see my family. Or
Right.
somebody who's like so wrong by my family, they're running the other way. Like, that's what I've experienced a lot in past relationships. And I feel like you do the great middle ground with all of that.
Right.
And I feel like and of course, I'm speaking for myself, that even like with your family, that we do things in a great way that we do that together.
Well, I was gonna say that I feel similar with my family, but especially I think about my mother.
Mm-hmm.
You may not agree with how I handle my relationship with my mother. I've never asked, but you let me have that relationship the way that I need it to be. And if you feel the need to interact with her more or do things with her, you do. But you never make me feel like you're pushing me to do those things, if that makes sense. You
Mm-hmm.
accept that the relationship I have with her is what it is. And again, in a very similar way, I appreciate that, as opposed to, you need to spend more time, or you need to call, or you need to, that would just irritate me to no end. And I appreciate that you're just like, yeah, that's just the way you have your relationship.
Yeah, so I think we do good with that.
I think we do as well.
Oh, and look,
Oh,
Mika
thank
was
you.
like,
Just in time for me
let me
to
get out of the way just in time for that.
I like this.
Okay.
I'm gonna skip to 12.
Okay.
What made you feel most supported this year?
Oh, actually, I answered the last question. I get to ask you a
Oh,
question.
yes, you did answer. You asked the question, but then you answered it. That's a good
I
point.
answered.
Okay, so
So then we'll just turn that to you. So what made you feel most supported this year?
it's not gonna be a single moment.
Okay.
Miko,
It's back on the paper.
back on the paper, like, trying to get my hand to pet him. For me, it's multiple things over the year, and it sort of harkens back to what I talked about earlier, it's the constant support you have given me in moments where I would have expected to either be ignored or not supported or negatively reacted to. And I'm trying to think of an example or a specific example, but I can't. But what I can tell you is I've thought to myself multiple times that for a person who expects a partner to react the worst possible way, you consistently react in a way that's better than I could have imagined. And if I would have thought of the right reaction, it's even better than that, if that makes sense. So I have been notorious for choosing bad relationships, which is why I chose for a long time to not be in a relationship because I didn't trust myself to make choices that were good for me because I'd made so many bad ones. So my expectations in a relationship tend to lean towards negative. And over again, when I'm worried about your reaction to something and expecting something negative, you consistently give me more positive than I even could have imagined it would have been. I just find that fascinating. And it leads into what I talked about before, in that I feel so supported that it blows my mind that it's even possible. So a relationship can be infinitely greater growth as opposed to a ball and chain, or it's not a weight, it's an uplifting. And I was aware that could be, but didn't imagine I would ever be in a relationship like that.
Yes. See, I had a hard time imagining all of that was even possible. Like, I know that we have all of that, but it's so funny that, like, when you tried to, like, think of the relationships that you admire, that it was hard for me at times to, like, look at relationships I admired. And sometimes you didn't see them as fully as you could, right?
Right.
But it was hard. So it's been so amazing to, like, discover our relationship. And then it's made it easier to see all the positives in other relationships, like, since we've had this relationship. It's just amazing.
And this is a deeper discussion, not for us, but I feel like we live in a society that benefits from making people more aware of divisiveness than togetherness.
Mhm.
You know, on TV shows, the husband and wife are usually divisive
Yes.
and not together. Relationships are divisive. Political things are divisive. I just feel like our society is very focused on pulling people apart instead of putting them together. And so you don't often see the benefits of a healthy relationship.
Oh, they would never make a reality TV show about us. It would be so boring. Everyone would hate it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's like, no, there's not enough. Like, they would try to come up with ways to make it more interesting because but in fact, we don't have enough things to be divisive about.
And the reality is, sure, we don't always get along.
Yeah,
like, we're going to have things.
we're real.
You know, there's parts of your personality that yeah, and there's parts of mine that are the same way, and that's okay. And we're going to sometimes handle those differences well, and sometimes not so well. But we never allow either of those options to be the focus or the central part of our relationship.
Yes.
And I think that goes back to the trust factor. I trust that you love me, even if you don't like certain parts of my personality or certain reactions that I have to things.
Mhm.
There's a freedom in that trust so that I'm not defensive all the time.
Yes.
And I hope you feel the same way, but that is something that I didn't expect.
Yes. Well, I think the challenge with all that is when we don't have enough of those examples, because my closest friends get the most up close view to our relationships.
Mhm.
And my closest friends are constantly commenting on how much they get out of that. Because even hearing the stories, and I can't think of any of them right now, but even when I'm frustrated with something with you, the way that I hold it and the way that I feel it and the way that I experience it is
Mhm.
so much different than they're used to seeing and experiencing and having conflict with relationships, right?
Right.
And so people don't have examples of that. And so that's part of the challenge is that people don't have examples of that.
Right.
And my closest friends get that close view of that. And we don't have books and stories and TV shows and movies and whatever else that show enough of that. And probably because it's not interesting. I don't know. Like,
Well, I would say
yeah.
it's for the same reason that the news doesn't give you positive stories.
Yeah.
People are more engaged by negativity. They're more likely to tune into it for whatever reason. I'm not even gonna go into human nature.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. People don't have as many positive things out there, and probably because positivity doesn't sell. It's probably,
Yes.
another bummer.
That's
And
what I want more of.
me
That's
too.
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we sat down last night and watched Inside Out 2. We had the opportunity to watch whatever movie, and Sean was like, What would you like to watch? This or this or this?" And I really wanted to see Inside Out 2 for that positivity. I knew that it was gonna be positive.
And it was like one of the top movies of the year, wasn't it? Or one of the top movies of the year?
I assume so. Was
I
it last year or the year before they came I don't even know. I can't
It
believe
was
it
this
took us this
last
long to
year,
watch.
and I feel like I've seen some headline about it being
Like,
it broke some record or it was a top movie for the year or something.
yeah.
I saw in some headline for the year. So that's a positive.
But yeah, but I look for the positivity more, because I feel there's so much negative around. And I love negative stuff as much as anybody else when it comes to entertainment, right?
Yes.
But yeah, sometimes I just wanna see that, like, positive, uplifting watching rom-coms, like,
Yes.
people laugh because I tell them that I watch lots of rom-coms. I even did before Sean and I got together,
Mhm.
and the reason for that is, at the end, it's gonna be a positive, uplifting story about love, which even if I didn't
Even
believe
more
it,
ironic. Yes, for
right?
you. Yes, yes, yes.
It's still nice to see it.
Yes. This is amazing. We are gonna have to cut this episode into 2 episodes because we are going to give you guys the last 2 categories, but we are going to get this into 2 episodes. And so we are going to come back so you guys can finish having more of this because this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you guys so much for listening in on this. This has been lovely. I love this. And hopefully everyone listening has enjoyed this as well. You guys can get in the show notes, you guys can get this entire all 20 questions ones we've been skipping over as well. And I want to hear from folks too about what you guys thought of this, what you got out of this.
I'd be interested in thank you for asking me to do this because as we mentioned, this isn't something I would ever choose like to do or have the idea to do. And I've enjoyed it. So my expectation of having a miserable time and to lay it out there, more miserable time because I'm so worried about I don't think I look good, I don't think I speak well, all of the things that would cause me anxiety over it manifesting in I'm on screen.
Yes. Yeah.
But I enjoyed it very much, and I found myself not thinking and focusing on those things, so
Oh, I'm glad. Yes. Not focusing on those things is key to probably part of that. Excellent. Well, good. Well, definitely. We will be back then. So you guys can hear the last 2 categories of communication, understanding, and future and aspirations, which future and aspirations is the one I'm most excited about, obviously. So 2025. We want to get into this next year. So thank you guys so much for being here with us.
thank you.
I value the time we shared together today. Thank you for making time to be here and to continue taking steps towards growth and bringing more ease into your life. I'd love for us to stay connected on Instagram at Shauna Podcasts or at the.grit.show. There's even a link in bio at the.grit.show where you can send me an email to let me know what you thought today's episode. Hearing from you helps to make the effort that goes into producing these episodes worthwhile. After all, you're why I'm here. And since it's been a while since you've heard this, you are the only one of you that this world has got. And that really does mean something. I hope you realize that. I'll be back again soon, and I hope you're following along or subscribed so that you'll know and be here too.